This video reviews bias. When you are collecting survey data, you can sometimes find bias in the questions or how you collect the material. And so all bias is just an influence on the data gathering process. So the first thing that you need to be able to do is identify bias. And we're going to look at 4 different types. So the first one is sampling bias, which occurs when the sampling frame does not reflect the characteristics of the population. So for example, a survey asks students at a football game whether funding should be spent on football equipment or the school board. Right? So the problem here is that the sample only has football fans. It doesn't represent the entire population that this survey affects. The next type of bias is called non-response bias, which occurs when particular groups are underrepresented in a survey because they choose not to participate. So for example, satisfaction surveys. Which are questions of the type, they say, were you satisfied with the service that you received at Kelsey's, at Eastside Mario's, at Future Shop, at Best Buy, anything like that. And the problem is that people who are happy with the service often don't respond. Amazon is another one. Sometimes if you read the comments or the reviews, they are very, very negative because the people that choose to respond are people that are unhappy with the product. The third type of bias that you should be familiar with is response bias. This happens when factors in a sampling method influence the results. Participants in a survey may deliberately give false or misleading answers. The respondents are too afraid or embarrassed to answer sensitive questions honestly, or may wish to skew the results. Also, poorly worded questions can produce a biased result unintentionally. So sometimes if a survey is too long, that is when you get this happening. You've probably all done those personality tests. You're interested for the first 5 questions, but then not for the next 25, and you just click. Another one here, so embarrassed, who failed the last test. Okay, people are often embarrassed or afraid to answer that question honestly. And then the last one is poorly worded questions. This is where you end up with what's called leading questions, which are dangerous in a survey. For example, do you feel it is fair to use helpless little mice in the cruel testing of makeup products? Now, hopefully you can see in this question, regardless of how you feel about animal testing in makeup products, the words that they choose to use in the question bias you towards one particular answer. If you are pro animal testing, you might be embarrassed or find it difficult to answer this question honestly because of the adjectives that they used when describing those little mice that are used in the cruel testing of makeup products. The last type of bias that you should be familiar with is household bias, and this occurs when one type of respondent is overrepresented because groupings of different sizes are polled equally. So, for example, SAC surveys about music at an upcoming dance, and they choose 10 people from each grade. Okay, we have more grade 9s, so therefore by only asking 10 people, the grade 9s are not represented proportionally. You should be familiar with the 4 types of bias, be able to give a definition of each, and be able to identify the bias in a given survey question.